Who am I? I'm the guy that has to follow Chris Howard. It's a joy to be here, but I have to admit I'm a little nervous because I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a public speaker, I'm a Socratic teacher. In fact, in our two schools, it's absolutely forbidden for a teacher to even utter a declarative sentence. We can only ask questions. Now, I have to admit this can get a little annoying. When I come home after a day in class, my wife says, "How did class go today?" And my response is, "How do you think it went?" Despite my shortcomings, I hope you'll join me in a quest today. It's a story about a teacher and a father who discovered how little he knew about learning. And it's a story about a tale about geniuses and heroes that with your help just might change the world. It's a story about our current educational system, a paradigm that I believe is so fundamentally flawed that we have to reject it. It's a story about early education in America. Early education, I think, is the seeds of what made America great. Back in a day when learning to know, book learning mattered, but learning to do and learning to be were far more important. And it's a vision of an educational tsunami that I believe is swelling up in America, building on what America does best, that if we can just find an army of master teachers, we'll in fact change the world. What's it going to look like? What's this new world going to look like? This revolution, here it goes. Heroes and a hero's journey, Google and gaming, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the Boy Scouts. But I'm getting a little ahead of the story. The journey for Laura and I began 3 years ago as we were considering moving our two young boys from the non-traditional Montessori school to a more traditional environment. I went to see the best teacher at the top traditional school in our city. And I asked him, when should we move our boys to a more traditional school? And immediately he responded, he snapped, as soon as possible. Taken aback, I asked why. And he said, once they've been in an environment like that, they will hate sitting at a desk and being talked at all day. At that moment, I pictured our two curious, lively boys. And I'll tell you, my heart really broke. And before I could stop myself, I said, I don't blame them. He looked down at the floor for what seemed like the longest time, and I was afraid I'd offended him. And when he looked up, he had tears in his eyes, and he said to me, I don't either. I went home that day and I told my wife, I don't care what it takes, if we have to homeschool or we have to start our own school. I'm done with traditional education. So that's what we did. We went on this journey of starting a school. But I had to ask myself, as we considered this new adventure, a question kept bothering me. How did a country founded on the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness come to accept that learning meant chaining a child to a desk? It turns out that all started long before any of us were born, with the Industrial Revolution. Carnegie and Rockefeller, with all the best intentions, were very concerned about the masses of people moving to the city to work in factories. They decided to professionalize education. In other words, to build a school system that would turn out docile factory workers. All of a sudden, everything I had looked at in traditional education and wondered about made sense. Long rows of industrial lockers, children sitting together in the same age group in a row of desks, a teacher standing in front saying, "Eyes up here," and students regurgitating what they heard. Every 45 minutes, a bell ringing. A bell ringing to interrupt and tell you it's time to change your thinking, even if you're in the middle of a creative thought. I decided, so I must confess, while I sit here and criticize this today, I've been in the room with other CEOs and politicians, and I've participated in conversations where we talked about the K through 12 educational pipeline and standardized tests and tweaking a system so it would create more and more productive citizens. And I have to tell you, I'm ashamed of that now, because there's only one problem with that paradigm. My children aren't widgets, and neither are yours. So here's your first takeaway from this quest. Children aren't widgets. They are precious beings, God-given gifts and heroes in waiting. And I believe that any system that treats them otherwise is fundamentally and morally flawed. I decided to keep digging and came to another startling conclusion, that the key to the future of American education just might lie in its past. A time before Carnegie and Rockefeller, when learning to know, book learning, mattered, but learning to be and learning to do were far more important. To learn to know, you had to have the book learning, but you had to actually be able to do something, and who you became mattered more. It was a time of one-room schoolhouses and reading and writing and arithmetic, and even more importantly, character and heroes. Now, colleges were for a few wealthy people back then that wanted to become ministers or perhaps lawyers. Most others went to work in apprenticeships where they learned real-world skills that actually helped people. A simple, backwards system, you say? Perhaps. But it gave us Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln and Edison and hundreds and even thousands of innovators and entrepreneurs. In fact, I really think it was the seeds of what made America great. Have you ever wondered why America continues to prosper in a time of terribly failing schools and declining test scores? I believe it was this master-apprentice approach to education that built such a strong culture of self-starters and innovators and entrepreneurs that even the assembly line educators can't stamp them out. I believe that our entrepreneurial culture and the future of our country rest on having students ask and answer 4 simple questions that traditional education has forgotten even how to ask. Question 1, who am I and where am I going? The fundamental question of why am I here? Question 2, what tools will I need and which skill will I need to master? Question 3, who will affirm me and hold me accountable? And the final question, how do I prove what I can do? Now, the question today is, how do we revive these questions in our schools? And this is where the story switches back to Heroes and a Hero's Journey, Google and Gaming. Google and Gaming, Alcoholics Anonymous, and the Boy Scouts. And I want to hasten here to say, I'm now about to give you some reports from the front lines of educational innovation. There's stories drawn from our schools, but I'm highlighting on those because those are stories I've seen with my own eyes. It's an eyewitness account. I've also seen these same stories, though, beginning to bubble up all around the country. So let's take that first question of who am I and where am I going? This is actually the easiest question to answer. The children at our Acton Academy Elementary School, and the students in the Acton MBA program, the participants in our new Master Apprentice My Entrepreneurial Journey program, all believe that they are heroes on a hero's journey. They are looking for their greatest gifts, ways to use them that bring them great joy, in the service of others to overcome any obstacles in life. I will tell you, I think there is no more powerful or scalable idea in education than to convince students that they are heroes in waiting, destined for an important quest. It's a relatively simple miracle to ignite that thought in the mind of a student, but it is a miracle nonetheless. Next question, question 2. What skills do I need? And which skill should I master? Which one is my special gift? Here's where Google and gaming comes in. At the Acton Elementary School, we're using the latest in adaptive gaming software. Software that adjusts to the student and makes it fun to learn. Software like Khan Academy, Dreambox, and Rosetta Stone to deliver the simple skills, reading, writing, and arithmetic. At the Acton MBA, let me show you these pictures, I forgot. These are pictures of the students putting those skills into action. They believe in these two pictures that they are actually in Thomas Edison's Menlo Park laboratory, and they are doing high school level electricity experiments. It's amazing the learning that we see. At our Acton School of Business in the My Entrepreneurial Journey program, students actually do 300 real-world case studies, participate in award-winning sim games, and then take the learning out into the world. In fact, at our MBA program, you have to go out and sell door to door. You have to sell a $20 children's book for $30. You have a quota, and if you don't meet your quota, you don't come back. It's an idea of taking the skills out in the world and learning how to use them. Does it work? At the Acton Academy, in the first 10 months, spending no more than an hour to an hour and a half a day on basic skills, our children gained 2.5 grade levels. Now I want to turn to the third question, perhaps one of the hardest ones, and perhaps the key to this whole revolution. Who will affirm me and hold me accountable? This idea of Alcoholics Anonymous and that transformational learning requires great dedication. It requires an intense commitment, constant affirmation, and someone who cares enough to walk beside you and hold you accountable. And like Alcoholics Anonymous, I believe, for lifelong learners, it has to be episodic. You have to be able to come in and partake and leave and partake again, not be pushed along on some conveyor belt from station to station. At the Acton Academy and at the business school, we use written covenants between teachers and students and parents and students and teachers. In fact, the entrepreneurs like me that teach receive a $5,000 base pay and up to a $30,000 bonus. We grade, by the way, on a forced curve, so A's mean something. And our bonus is based totally on student satisfaction. And at the end of each semester, we get up in public, we receive our ratings and our check, and the lowest rated teacher doesn't come back. At the Acton Academy, every week we survey parents and the students, even the elementary school students, and ask what's working and what's not working in the school. But I will tell you, I think actually the most radical experiment we're trying is with this new My Entrepreneurial Journey Master Apprentice system, where we've eliminated the teacher altogether. Like Alcoholics Anonymous, it is a voluntary group of people coming together to learn and to lead, just like TED, or just like the people that built Wikipedia. So you have you going through the program, After the first few weeks of getting these intense challenges, you have to go find a guide. Somebody you respect so much, like the Wizard of Oz, that once you promise you won't quit, you're not about to quit. But what's funny is you can't contact that person. You can't talk to them while you're going through these challenges. They only read your journal and read about your voyage, and every 2 weeks or so send you an affirming email with questions. I'm guiding 10 people now all over the world. It takes me about 30 minutes a week. So the program and the promises actually do the work. You also have a running partner. That's someone who's your best friend, someone who really cares about you enough to spend 30 minutes a week meeting face to face, holding you accountable for your promises, and helping you when you get stuck. You have a forum, a group that's going with you that you can have Socratic discussions with face to face. And you have a Sherpa, which is our version of all the accumulated wisdom of the entrepreneurs that have come before you, asking you questions and inspiring you. The people who've been through this program use 2 words to describe it: life-changing. But here's what's really important. Any nonprofit in this country could use the system, and it would cost no more than $100 a month. And it doesn't matter that it's our system, I don't care about that, but this voluntary getting people together and in covenant, going together and guiding and learning, I think is the tsunami that's coming. The final question, how do I prove what I can do? That's where the Boy Scouts come in, because you have a system of merit badges and tests and examples of proving what you can do. No more $200,000 diploma riddled with grade inflation. It signifies no usable skills at all, but an actual record of who you are, who you're becoming, what you care about, verified by guides and running partners that were there with you. So there's a report from the front lines. A sample of the tsunami that I believe is building all across the country, a voluntary effort enhanced by 21st century technology that is nothing more than a return to the educational past that made this country great. But what about the army of master teachers? I have a friend, a master teacher, who is one of the most educated people I know. He said there's only one requirement to be a master teacher, only one. And that is, you must believe that every student that walks into your classroom is a genius. And it's your job to spark that genius and set that student out as a hero on a hero's journey. Where are the millions of master teachers? They're all around you, and they're sitting in your seat. You can cling to this failed assembly line paradigm based on fear and control, or you can raise your hand and become a master teacher yourself, someone who believes in geniuses and heroes and is willing to act as a guide or start your own school. There's a generation of Washingtons, Jeffersons, Lincolns, and Edisons waiting for you. Thank you.